Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRAR. I'm Bobbi Howe, and you are.
I am Alex Gehring. Bobbi, it's so good to be with you today.
It's so good to be with you today.
It's so nice because I just did 3 episodes with somebody else,
Oh,
with
I'm
other
sorry.
people, and I missed you so much. Jeff is great. I love Jeff so much, and John is great.
Mhm.
It's not that, but I missed you. That was a
I,
long, that was like a long 4 weeks that I had to spend with those guys waiting for those guests to appear, and I'm just really glad that we got through it, and now I'm back with Bobbi.
that was also a very long 4 week NAR budget and finance meeting that I was at, so therefore I couldn't attend those three recordings of those episodes. So therefore, we both had a long 4 weeks. I'm just going to be honest with you. There we go. So
Well, it's good to be back, and we have a really exciting and special guest today that I know you've gotten to spend some time with. I actually haven't had the pleasure of meeting her. Who are we talking to today, Bobbi?
I am just like, I'm on cloud nine. I'm so super excited about our guest today. We have I think we can still say new because I think we're still right a little over a year in right now, but we have our brand new CEO for the National Association of Realtors, Nykia Wright. She is a former CEO of the Chicago Sun-Times and just an all-around amazing human being. Like I've been preaching for the last year, telling everyone to give Nakia 1 year in this role to show what she can do. And heads are turning, people are noticing. We always talk about the right person at the right time. And in my heart of hearts, and I'm not sucking up or anything like that, like this is genuine. I truly feel that Nakia is the right person at the right time for NAR. We are at a point of crisis between, the different news stories we have that keep getting put out into the news sphere that we have, the settlement. We have all of this just unrest, and she could not be the more perfect person to walk in and walk us through this mess. She's just a very calm undertone to her, but she's also very straightforward, tells it like it is, does not sugarcoat stuff, and just pushes forward with doing what we need to do. She recently brought in Sherry Chris, who was CEO for Better Homes and Gardens and all of those companies for many, many years to help reestablish that relationship that we have with our big brokerages who feel like they've been ignored by the National Association for decades, and they have been. She also recently brought on Jared Grosso, who was the AE for New Jersey Realtors, to come work with our state and local associations because they've felt ignored by NAR for the last decade, and they have. So she's putting all these pieces together. She has an uphill battle in front of her and all of us as we go moving forward. I'll be working very closely with her next year in my role at NAR, and I'm just super excited to see where we go and what we do because it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it for an association and an industry that we all love and care about so much. And just bringing it back to the everyday member that they can truly understand what their national association does for them, other than them paying a little bit of money each year.
Well, Bobby, it's funny. I hear this from a lot of different people, including quite a few association skeptics, right? People who have been a little bit frustrated for one reason or another. They feel pretty good after they've had a conversation with her, or even just heard her speak. I guess
Yeah.
there was one at least 3 or 4 weeks ago. Where was she? I don't even know where it was, but
Hmm.
I listened to industry relations with our with the infamous Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson, and they were talking about how phenomenal she was in one of the speeches that she gave. She got a standing ovation. When you've got podcasts like that talking about how Nakia could be the change that we need at the right time, that's a really positive thing for
Yeah,
the
I can say it
association.
all day long, but for someone like Rob and Greg to come along and say it, that just puts a whole nother level to it. I mean, honestly, genuinely, and Rob and Greg are my friends. Like I love, well, I'm way closer to Rob than Greg, but I love them. But they're normally the dark horse,
And I
and
will
for
say that
them,
it was more Greg who was positive than it was Rob.
Fair.
So,
But she was on stage at Inman and she got a great reception at Inman. And
yeah,
then there was another industry event that, like you, I just cannot remember what it was. And yet people are resonating with her. She's going into meetings with these large associations, with these large brokerages, and they come in and they're, NAR, I could run NAR better than you can. And here's what you're doing wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then she starts talking about the plan. And by the time they leave the meeting, they're on working terms again. And so, but she's not afraid to go into these meetings where she knows they're going to scream and yell at her and tell her how horrible NAR is. That's the thing is, she wants to hear how bad people see it is because she can't fix it unless she knows the truth
right.
about how people really feel.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. I'm excited to bring the conversation to our members, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Bobbi, before we bring in Nykia, do you have a book bit?
I wouldn't want to let you down, so of course I do.
Oh my gosh, it better be appropriate. This better be like a
It
real.
is.
I don't mean that it would be inappropriate. I just mean that I bet it's relevant. I bet it's relevant. I didn't think you'd bring something inappropriate,
Right.
right? I meant
No,
relevant. Yeah,
I know what
yeah.
you meant. All right.
I say this because, sorry, I have to explain. There was an alphabet book that my in-laws
Oh,
got for my 7-year-old. And I was questioning whether or not, because my in-laws are pretty straight-laced, and they also listen to this podcast sometimes. But and so, but it was. I think it's like the. I don't know. All I know is that as I was reading it, I almost swore like a million times, and then I had Charlie read it, and that was even funnier. So anyway,
without
not
further
that kind
ado,
of an inappropriate book. That's not what I was thinking of. Okay, do 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 do. Bobby's book bit.
Casey, and I do believe that I have picked a relevant book for this book bit. There you go, sir. The book is Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I mean, you got to pull out Simon when Nykia is coming on. I mean, something like that. All right. So the book argues that business is not a competition, but an infinite journey. The quote from the book is, "Our lives are finite, but life is infinite. We are the finite players in the infinite game of life. We come and we go, we're born and we die, and life still continues with us or without us." And so in the book, he talks about at one point, both Apple and Microsoft invited him to present at their education summits within the span of a few months. Comparing the two experiences after the fact, he noticed something. At Microsoft event, the majority of the presenters devoted a good portion of their presentation to talking about how they were going to beat Apple. At the Apple event, 100% of the presenters spent 100% of their time talking about how Apple was trying to teachers teach and to help students learn. This marks the difference between a company that thinks in a finite mindset and one that thinks with an infinite mindset. Infinite mindset companies last longer. Maintaining this mindset requires following continuous 5-step cycle. And the 5-step cycle is number 1, to advance a just cause. Number 2, build trusting teams. Number 3, learn from worthy rivals. 4, to practice existential flexibility. And number 5, demonstrate the courage to lead. For this book bit, my 3 points, I'm going to focus in on the just cause and the worthy rivals because we can't go into all 5 on a 3-part book bit. So lesson number 1 is the world is both full of finite and infinite games, but business is infinite and must be played with an according mindset. Soccer is an excellent example of a finite game. There's a limited field with which the game is played. The rules are clear. There's a set time for when the game begins and when it ends. Naturally, finite games inspire short-term thinking. You have to win immediately, and the only way to win is to kick your opponent out of the game. Business, relationships, and education, on the other hand, are infinite games. There's no beginning or no end. New players join all the time and others leave. The world is full of both finite and infinite games, and problems occur when we play infinite games with a finite mindset. Lesson number 2, infinite thinking requires a just cause, and yours must meet 5 criteria to keep you advancing with purpose. Sinek quotes a study which suggests that S&P 500 company lifespans have declined by over 40 years from 61 years on average to only 18 years now. Why? Because fewer and fewer companies try to advance a just cause. A just cause is a specific vision of a future state that does not yet exist, a future state so appealing that people are willing to make sacrifices in order to help advance the cause towards that vision. So there has to have 5 traits for a just cause. The first one, it must be for something rather than just against something. Too often we just try to go against something versus being for an actual cause. It has to be inclusive. It has to be service oriented. It must be resilient and it must be idealistic. That's how you get people bought into a just cause. And then finally, lesson number 3, worthy rivals feel like competitors, but they can actually help us learn and improve. Most of the time in business, the pie is big enough for everyone, and it's better to focus on growing the pie altogether than to try to snag pieces off your neighbor's plate. Analyzing a worthy rival will make you better at what you do. It'll also help you gain clarity on why you're doing it. Embracing competitors as co-players, and you'll slowly adopt a mindset of abundance rather than one of scarcity, which I talk about all the time. And that is what differentiated Apple from Microsoft through much of the early 2000s, and it's the reason why Apple is still one of the most valuable companies in the world today. And that is my book bit, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek.
I love it, Bobby. All right, should we go get Nykia?
Let's go get Nykia. Welcome back to Kansas City Real Talk. We are here with our guest, the CEO of the National Association of REALTORs, Nykia Wright. Nykia, welcome.
Thank you.
We are super excited to have you here with us today. And just ever since you came on this with us at NAR, I've just been super excited for everything that you are doing for the National Association. But one of the greatest things that really just felt bonded me towards you was when you were at Leadership Summit and you told your life story. So can you tell our guests, our listeners, can you tell them a little bit about your life story and everything that's led up to you now being the CEO of the National Association of Realtors? You can take that as long or short as you want.
Oh wow! So I hope to not bore anyone. I was born and raised in Atlanta. I went to college in Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University. I knew when I went to college that I wanted to be a business major. That was very important to me, and so I was a finance major. Loved that. After graduation, went and worked at J.P. Morgan Chase in the City of London. Got international business certification from the University of Cambridge. Came back to Atlanta, where I'm from, and worked in the franchise industry. And so while I was in high school, I worked at Popeye's Chicken and Biscuits. That was my first job. Loved the whole business in a box concept. And so when I came back to the United States, I actually worked in the financial analyst section of that, where I analyzed the financial statements of thousands of franchise concepts. The idea was to ensure that those financial ratios were in order. If they were not, I would put bondholders in to get maximum investor recovery, or we would auction off the franchise to the highest bidder because bondholders were on the other end and they needed to perform. After that, because of my love of business, I went to get my MBA from Dartmouth in Hanover. And then I also studied at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, India. So business, business, business. After I graduated from Dartmouth, I became a business doctor. So you all know that as a consultant. And I did that for about 10 years. So I worked at publicly traded companies, McDonald's, Toll Brothers of the world. I worked at top tier universities, helping them with their strategic plans, nonprofit and for-profit organizations, always trying to solve a discrete problem at each of those institutions. And so I got the opportunity to leave that and become the chief operating officer at the Chicago Sun-Times in industry under siege journalism. Did that for a year, was elevated to become the CEO, and I was there for 5 years. And so really bringing that business back from the brink of extinction and bankruptcy. By the time I left, we had merged with WBEZ, which is Chicago's version of NPR. And at the time, that was one of the most innovative models in journalism. While it sounds simple, the reason that it was innovative is because you sort of had, I would say, the assets of the New York Times. You have paper, you have print, you have podcasts, all the things sort of under one roof. So that merging was very interesting. And then I got a call to consider being the interim CEO of the National Association of Realtors. And I said, hey, why not? And so I've been here since technically November of 2023.
But I loved you sharing the story of your uncle and being an investor and
Yeah.
just how that inspired you. That I almost left in tears just hearing you tell that story of how
Oh,
inspiring it was.
awesome. Awesome. So, my uncles have been very, very important in my life. My mother is one of seven, and so my aunts as well. I was really raised by a village. And so, my uncle Andrew got a job out of college to work at Arthur Anderson in DC. Part of that requirement was that he had to volunteer with an organization. He ended up volunteering, and when he met Katharine Graham's son, Donald Graham. Donald Graham was a Metropolitan DC police officer. Katharine Graham was the owner of the Washington Post. They got to sort of be friends, and my uncle was asked to invest in the Washington Post. And so he did, but he loved stocks, he loved business. And so he actually went to a shareholders meeting. This was in the 1970s. When he went to the shareholders meeting, he asked a question. Most people in the 1970s, because this is pre-internet, did not have any questions about the digital version. It was about my paper is late or I don't like the content. He actually got up and asked an asset allocation question. One of those board members came up to him afterwards and said, I really like how you think. You should invest in my company out west. At the time, these shares were $400 a piece in Washington, in sort of pre-internet world. And when he met this guy in Washington, D.C., he actually called his friends. People told him that he was crazy. He invested anyway. That man was Warren Buffett. And so he invested in Class A shares of Warren Buffett, $400 a piece. Of course, as you all may know, today they're trading at $800,000 a piece. He's actually in Omaha now, coming back home because, as you may know, Warren stepped down as CEO. And so I had the opportunity to accompany him to shareholder meetings for many years, going to Omaha, the Woodstock of capitalism, and really understand the business economics. I loved how Warren Buffett could just sit with Coca-Cola and candy and just discuss the business. He knew what he was talking about. He didn't need any talking points, right? He was intimately involved, and I loved that as an example. But one of the things that I mentioned to you all, Bobbi, was at the beginning of every single shareholder meeting, there are always standard videos. They never change. One of them is when he was chairman of Salomon Brothers. This is when Salomon Brothers was going through a lot of change, and he had to come in and be interim chairman. And he said that he told his staff that if you lose money for the business, I will be forgiving. If you lose an ounce of reputation, I will be ruthless. And so that's sort of the opinion that I have as it relates to NAR. I am protecting this brand with integrity by any means necessary. And so people who are not on board with that will sort of experience my ruthlessness. As it relates to making mistakes, everyone makes those, and I understand that. But we are at a time where our constituents are expecting us to stand up for them every single day. And they have my commitment that as long as I'm in this seat, that's what I'll do.
I'm literally almost in tears hearing you say that again. Is it just we've needed that for so long, and just thank you for being you, but Alex, you can talk because I can't.
There's no more important message for our members to hear right now than that. I think you just won a lot of people over just with that statement. I've got a quick question. I know that you said, like, why not jump into this role? But there had to have been more to it than that. I mean, you stepped in at a really interesting time. I have to wonder, I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for those first 30 days. What did those first 30 days in this position feel like, look like? How did you prioritize the things that you needed to tackle, when you first started?
That's a good question. I cannot escape, though, my cutting of the teeth or training ground at the Chicago Sun-Times. The Chicago Sun-Times was under siege in terms of an industry, and we also did not have any money. If there are two things that you have going against you in a business, if those are the two things, that's quite depressing. So I'd really seen sort of what a catastrophic end could be. So by the time I got to NAR, yes, there were challenges, but it wasn't that the organization was also going broke. Now, if we continue along the path and we don't manage our finances and we sort of continually make consecutive wrong decisions, consecutive is the key word there, because wrong decisions will be made, but you just don't want to continue making them consecutively. If we continue that, then I would be nervous. But when I went to business school, there are only two mission statements of any companies or institutions that I've ever been affiliated with that I remember. One is my business school, and two is NAR. The mission of my business school was to better the world through business. So I got to do that. at the Chicago Sun-Times. I got to bring business principles to an industry that was under siege and help it. And so I get a lot of sort of psychic income from that, right? So my psyche is filled with that. When I came to NAR, understanding that the whole purpose was to preserve and protect property rights for all. Oh, by the way, I also get to use business principles to do that. More and more psychic income. And so I knew that the task ahead of me was great, but I also knew that the people that were around me, and that was the leadership team, were very serious about change. A lot of times CEOs have challenges because you may have a vision, you may have an opinion on something, but if the people around you, your thought partners, are not sort of in lockstep with that, whether you are in lockstep with them or them in lockstep with you, there's a problem. It was easy for me to say yes because this is one of the most serious group of people that I've ever met. I tell people all the time, when you think about industries and companies right now that are sort of going through enormous change, Boeing always comes to mind. But you know what's happening at Boeing? I do not think they're having a board meeting every single week. I'm meeting with my leadership team at least once every single week. It's on the calendar every Thursday. We talk from 8:30 to 9:30. That's scheduled. The other things are not, but we are always in constant contact. And so that's another thing, Alex and others, that I want members to know. Their leadership team is serious. I know there's a lot of noise out there about are they working? Are they working? These people are working overtime in order to make sure that there is an industry for people coming into the industry and for people to stay.
Nykia, you've referenced your vision. Can you tell us a little bit about what your vision for NAR and the leadership team, the vision for NAR is, and how are we going to go about achieving on that vision?
Absolutely. So at the most basic fundamental level, our role and responsibility, our implicit and explicit oath, is to help realtors get to their next successful transaction, and after that, get the next successful transaction, right? So we are here to ensure that people have an income that they can rely on, but also ensure that they are educating consumers in a way that is really helping them sort of propel their understanding and enjoyment of the American dream. And so what does that look like, though, brass tacks? One of the most important things that we've done over the last few months is we've interviewed, focus grouped, surveyed over 75,000 people. We did that, and it's important that we understand that we started doing that in a post-settlement world, because you could argue that data that you got pre-settlement is no longer relevant. So in a post-settlement world, we interviewed, focus group, surveyed over 75,000 people, and we asked them what they wanted. And the things that they wanted were sort of things that were core pillars, but they wanted more of that. One, it is clear that people want us to continue to amplify advocacy. Jared is one of the best people to say this, and so is Shannon, of course, because she leads that group. But what a lot of people don't understand is how many sort of bills and things that people are trying to pass that don't get passed because it's against sort of what the realtors stand for. A lot of times we hear the successes about the things that we promoted, but what we don't hear about are the things that we worked to ensure that are not sort of antithetical to the process and the way of life and procedures as it relates to realtors getting to their next transaction. So amplifying advocacy is super important. Education is important. The industry is continuing to change. Anyone who doesn't believe in continuing education is on their way to extinction. And I say that because I've been there and I've seen it, right? And so education is super important. Given that there's so many movements in the industry right now in a post-settlement world, every single company is picking their spot right now from a competitive landscape perspective. We should be that anchor. We should be that anchor in educating people on how to think through that. As independent contractors, people have the freedom to move between one company and another, among one company and another. But what should be stable is the education that they can get from NAR to be able to make those decisions. When we're also talking about the competitive landscape, we look at our first voice in real estate. We used to be the voice of real estate. There are too many people now in the industry for us to even pretend to claim that moniker. But we can be the first voice, and we are. And so the housing statistics information that we give out at the state, local, national level are very important, but also understanding the psychographics of what's happening. I was at the 1,000-watt conference a few short weeks ago, and before I got on stage, there were 3 chief marketing officers from very prominent organizations around the country, and they were given an academic exercise. And the question that was posed to them was, why is no one going after the baby boomer population. As a chief marketing officer, 1, 2, 3, go, give me your elevator pitch on why no one is going after that. And I thought, with our first in news information that we've been giving out and with our consumer ad campaign, we've been talking about that particular population. So when I say first voice, we are it. Maybe those chief marketing officers were really busy in their day to day and didn't know that. And that's fair because people are booked and busy on the right things. But we had the opportunity to put that information out weeks earlier. So it's not just age, it's not just race, it's the psychographics, right? You could be a 45-year-old thinking like a 30-year-old. And so all of those things in between are super important. Our partnerships are important. Our partnerships with the state and local associations, our partnerships with the brokerages, large, small, and everything in between, and our partnerships with the MLSs are super important. And so when you talk about the vision, it is bringing them to the table. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they have been absent from the conversations over the last, I want to say 10 to 15 years. Now, the most difficult thing that I have to do is bring them all to the table at one time. So I need to make sure that I have enough food in the kitchen, right, to feed that many people at one time. And their demands are great. And so how do you manage those conversations in a way that is helpful to sort of advance the industry? So partnerships, amplifying advocacy research, amplifying education and events, and the true sort of north is get to the next successful transaction. And after that, no rest for the weary, get to the next one amongst all of the change in the industry.
So when you say that you want NAR to be kind of the anchor, the anchor and the North Star are synonymous with one another, or what does the anchor look like?
The anchor is base camp. The North Star is the strategy that each of these companies is coming up with on their own, right? So for example, some people are choosing luxury market versus not. That's their true north. And that's sort of that layer on top of the foundation that we build. But at the most basic level, you should always be able to come back to base camp and be able to go anywhere in the industry that you want. That's how I sort of see NAR's role going forward. We've got
Understood. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. You can do whatever you want in this industry, and NAR is the base camp. I love that. Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
So, question, what metrics or what way of measuring what we're doing are we going to know that we're achieving on these things? Because a lot of it's idealistic. So how are we going to know that we're achieving and we're moving forward in that direction?
I appreciate that question. And that's something that is a moving target. It should not be in the future, but it is now, Bobbi, and here's why. So for the first time, we are asking for dashboards that are helping us get to our sort of true north, if you will. And so those KPIs are being built now. But from an advocacy perspective, you can easily look at sort of bills that were not passed because they are sort of against what the realtor family is asking us to go and promote. Look at the bills that are passed and see sort of how that's changing the industry, not only from a professional perspective, but also how that's helping their clients. And so that's easy to understand. First Voice in real estate, pumping out enough statistics where people around the country are able to interpret those, not just from a paragraph perspective, but also data visualization, quick hit understanding what's going on in the industry to help them understand how they will continue to navigate the industry. Partnerships is word of mouth, right? The more people that say that they were in front of us, that they think that we are thought partners and that we're bringing them to the table and that they are feeling comfortable, right? One easy metric would be sort of membership dollars, right? How many people continue to stay members as opposed to looking at and exploring other business models because they believe that this is where we need to go. Those are sort of the main ones if there were just a top dashboard. At the end of the day, though, there are lots of things that ladder up to that. We get lots of great ideas from the volunteer leaders around the country to say NAR should do this. Now it is our job to say, okay, we tried that. These are the successes, these are the failures, these are all of the things, so that they can go back and have more insights to say, do we tweak this? Do we kill it? Do we amplify it? Do we enhance it? All of those things. And so base camp needs to give them those data points to be able to make those decisions more intelligently.
Nykia, a lot of people would say that watching NAR they could feel like we're very focused on industry self-preservation. You hear that term every now and then. It's like, we're very focused on just making sure that realtors are in good shape. There are broader societal issues that we're all aware of that impact the real estate market. You talked a little bit about advocacy. It will have already happened, but we've got our RPAC auction coming up on Thursday. And I don't want to get too much into the RPAC side of things, but I do want to know, what are we doing from a broad perspective to make sure that we're at the forefront of advocacy efforts and having these hard discussions, not just at the national level. You guys do an incredible job at the national level, but utilizing national resources for the state and local levels as well. How can we leverage more that the National Association gives us?
So what's interesting is they are doing such a tremendous amount of work, Alex. In my sort of humble opinion, I don't know outright that we should be doing more. I'm wondering if we should just be communicating better on what we do. They are doing a ton. I mean, that team, it's so funny. I say internally, we must be in the office at least 3 days a week. And they're like, I know you're not talking to us, Nykia, because we're there every day. Because if we're not at the office, we're a block away at the Capitol, right? I'm having breakfast meetings, and then I come back to the office and I have dinner meetings to the work that they're doing, and the flywheel effect is just enormous. The volunteer leaders that they have mobilized around the country is even more enormous. That is a just very well operated function that benefits every single person in the country. So I really like what they're doing. But I want to go back to something that you said. I do understand where people are saying self-preservation and that type of thing. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be cautious when I say this, but that's not a bad thing.
Right.
I'm here at the behest of my members.
Yes.
So that is my stakeholder group, right?
Yes.
And so that's what we need to understand. I would imagine that any other association is responsible for their stakeholder group, right? People aren't paying me to go and measure and be responsible for everybody. There are ways that we can do that, but my primary focus and responsibility is to the members of this association. And so even though some people see that as a bad sort of term or phrase, I don't think so. Advocacy, though, is that perfect example of excellence that benefits every single person in the United States. Anyone who bought a house during COVID was able to do so because they were able to go and lobby in Washington to have realtors able to work when most people were supposed to stay at home, right? There are just so many things that society benefits from already, even though they are not paying to promote these advocacy things. And that's what I don't want anyone to forget.
One of the things that you said was, we don't necessarily need to be doing more. We need to be communicating better. And I think that has been our struggle as a local, state, and a national association for forever, at least, as someone who's grown up in the industry, but especially the last even 20 years or so, is there's just so much noise coming to us as everyday members. Is how do we cut through that noise so that people do pay attention to that message that we're sending, the communications that we're sending out, and so that they notice it apart from all the other stuff that's coming at them. Because at the end of the day, like, what does NAR do for us? We do so many things for you, but is it because we're communicating in so many different channels? Can we bring it all together? Is there a way to bite-sized chunks? You talked about infographics. I love infographics. That's my favorite way to consume stuff, because I can consume a whole lot of stuff in a small period of time, just absorb it into my brain, because I'm a visual learner, like many of us. How do we communicate better or more with our people and knock it into their head?
I tell people that's going to be the challenge of my tenure. It just is, because it's not just our realtors being inundated with real estate information, right? Everyone is being inundated. Everyone's time is chopped, almost down to the millisecond now, right? Even if you're talking about social media, things that people enjoy that have nothing to do with the industry, that will be the challenge of my tenure. One of the things that I think, though, that we need to get better at is really understanding, and this is why I'm bringing in people who used to work in the sort of real estate world. For example, Nykia McGriff. She's inside of the tent now, so she can help me understand the life cycle and the journey of a realtor, right? When do realtors actually have time to read these things? I tell people all the time, I get up at 3 a.m. No one else is getting up at 3 a.m., but I get up at 3 a.m. And when I get up at 3 a.m., that's when I read, right? We need to understand when realtors have downtime so that they can actually consume this, because sending something very early in the morning, that might not be the right time. Sending something late in the evening might not be the right time. Sending something that they can read on the weekend might not be the right time. They're probably out with clients. And so really understanding the user journey of our membership, I think, is step number one. Step number two, I think this is sort of where Jared is going to come into play. It's much more coordination with the states and locals, right? Calendar of who's sending out information, when are you sending it out, what is it about? Even internally within NAR, are 3 departments pressing send at one time? If so, that's not helpful, right? So there's some X's and O's from a fundamental level that we need to get right. And then we need to make sure that the content is pithy enough, but that's through a lot more surveys, focus groups, and other things to continue to get that feedback loop. I took a negotiations class at Columbia University last December, so I'm always investing in my learning, and also just need an excuse to get to New York to see a play, right? So I saw Wicked for the first time and had a really good time. But the first question that the professor posed to us in that class was, how do people get better? People are like, oh, age, oh, tenure, oh, whatever. No, in order for you to be 30 under 30, Alex, it's because you took feedback and you did something with it. And so you had time. So you didn't have to wait until you had the wisdom of a 70-year-old. You took feedback and you got better at it. So NAR needs to get back on the feedback loop. The more feedback we have, the better we can be. I tell people all the time, listen to the whispers so you don't have to hear the screams. I don't need to wait for people to be screaming about something. When it's a whisper, I need to start figuring out how I'm going to solve it so that it doesn't get loud, unruly, and sort of the opportunity cost of then stealing time to go solve something that I probably should have solved 2 months ago when it was minor, making it become major. So there's some X's and O's, Bobbi, but also I think that I'm probably 2.5 or 3 weeks away from announcing a new VP of comms. It's really going to be, 40 plus hours a week on PR, and then the other on marketing and stuff. And so we're still in the throes of those interviews. We have interviewed some very, very, very qualified candidates. And so I'm sharing the liability of that decision. So my other senior leaders can't say, Nykia, you picked. No, you helped me pick them. So they're going to be great. And so we're a couple weeks away from having a comms department that I think will be different from anything that NAR has seen in the last 10 to 15 years.
I think it makes so much sense for you to be doing what you're doing and bringing in more brokerages and more feedback from the local and state to get that feedback. Because I think the large part of the agent population just believes that we're getting most of our feedback from the choir, right? And we see this vast leadership and governance structure that you have. And for me personally, when I look at the governance structure of the National Association, it's almost a little bit overwhelming. But what I also see is that it's a massive structure that can be leveraged in a lot of different ways. So I want to know more about how you plan to leverage. We've got all of these committees. We've got a large board of directors. You've got is it the delegate body? Sometimes I mess up all of my terms, right? And then we've got our executive committee. And so this large governance structure, how do you leverage that? And how does that become a huge positive for the membership at large?
That's fair. But there's one thing that I want to make clear. So there's a line of demarcation in that. Most nonprofits have president and CEO, but those are smaller organizations where you have one body, 2 titles. It's important to me that the National Association of Realtors has a president and a CEO because the work is just too vast. The president is responsible for the volunteer membership. I'm responsible for the X's and O's internal. And so while I have an opinion on the leadership team, I don't have any influence or power. I do typically use, though, the title of CEO to help inform these bodies on what we are doing. I know that a lot of people are saying that it's big, it's big, it's big. And from a numbers perspective, it is. But I would challenge us to look more at the opportunity that we have ahead of us, which is the effectiveness of that organization. There's no way that anyone can tell you that even if you have 1,045 person board of directors, that all of a sudden tomorrow it's going to be 10. Like, that's not happening, right? So let's think realistically about sort of the challenge that we have ahead of us, and how do you arm people with information? How do you help the president know when to inform, persuade, or influence? How do I leverage the board of director meetings and get up and tell people our strategy and understand? How do I manage my minutes between those meetings to educate people on what's going on? And so by the time they get to the board of directors true meeting where they need to vote, that they have had enough time to deliberate on some of the very sort of large things that we have. But let's also rewind the tape just a bit. I would argue that in the last 25 to 50 years, there has not been this significant of a change in the industry. And so the body is not used to managing significant cultural issues, a settlement, de-risking of MLS rules and portfolio, picking new spots, economic changes that are jerky, and all of those things all at one time. And so if we are as effective as we could be, I would love to be able to leverage all of that mind power, that brain trust, to be able to help us solve some of these problems individually, because it's not anything I can do with 300 people internally. So it would have to be the volunteer leadership, the people who are out there on the ground, who are sort of seeing things from the ground up to be able to educate us on those things. And so if there were an ask, it would be, I understand the largesse, if you will, but let's be a little bit patient, because we have many problems to solve. And if we didn't have a body that was that large in the current state, we would be probably solving one per year. And Lord knows we don't have that kind of time.
Sure.
Nykia, we're coming up on the end of the time that we've asked of you, and we want to be very, very respectful of that. So the last question I always ask all of our guests is, what else? What else should we have asked of you? What else do you want our listeners to know? What else is going on?
I'll just say that our implicit and explicit oath, the team that I'm building and surrounding myself with, is to ensure that people are proud of the profession that they chose. And so there's a lot of work that we have to do to get there, but it is not lost on me, and it is not lost on anyone that I bring into this building, that we have sort of a Herculean effort in front of us. But I can promise you that the people that I brought in are committed. And so just give us a few extra minutes to kind of show you some of our results.
I'm so excited to be on this journey with you, and we could not have a better person at the helm right now. So just thank you so much for your time. Thank you for pouring into our listeners and our members, because it means the world to us. It really does. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Nykia.
Thank you.